couple of very sad notes
Mm.
happened in professional wrestling this week too, and we'll dive into those in a little deeper as we go through the show. But two, a legend and an active wrestler who just is completely wired into the pro wrestling community in so many ways, passed away this week. As on Wednesday, we lost Terry Funk,
Legend,
the
icon.
of course, started wrestling back in the '60s, and a former NWA World Champion, had incredible runs through the NWA, WWE, WCW, ECW, Japan, was everywhere. And that man just kept finding a way to revitalize his career and revitalize his career. And every time you thought Terry was done,
Right.
he'd just find a way to get back in there and do something new and something different that would have people talking. And, of course, just one of the best to ever do it. I mean, you hear so many times, so many people have said, their idol is in professional wrestling is Terry Funk. He's very underrated when it comes to the history of pro wrestling. I think I don't know how people forget about him. And Dory's brother, Dory Funk Jr. were both NWA champions. Obviously, Terry probably had um, the more out there career for modern day fans.
Hmm.
Dory kind of, once things finished up in that WWE run where he and Terry were there, he kind of stepped aside. But Terry kept rolling and rolling. But we lost Terry Funk, and of course, Windham Rotunda, otherwise known as Bray Wyatt, suddenly passing away at the age of 36. A horrendous story. Of course, he was going to be getting ready to wrestle Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania this year,
Right.
and then all of a sudden, he went poof, and no one knew what was going on. Nothing was disclosed about what had happened to him. And as it turned out, Sean Ross Sapp knew the whole time. And then once he passed away, was given permission by the family to talk about it, that Bray had a congenital heart issue that got aggravated when he caught COVID, and he nearly died from that. And he was just starting to get close to a return, and then suddenly had a heart attack and passed away on Thursday.
Yeah. Sad news, man. It's a reminder, and I think we all, we take it for granted, but it could be like that. And he brought so much, like in that limited time, I guess. I mean, you see people have expanded careers, but like so much. He was a game changer, and just definitely different and stood out from the pack.
Yeah, a three-time world champion in WWE, multiple-time tag team champion, and even more important, obviously, is the fact that he is a father of four,
Hmm.
and those kids don't have their dad anymore, and it's very very sad to see. But one thing, and I think one thing that people forget, and we'll probably talk about this a little more later on, but that I think part of the reason that this has rocked the wrestling community so hard is, one, everybody loved the guy.
Yeah.
But when you think about just who he is and where he fits into wrestling history, obviously is, you have he's a line of the Wyndham family, with Blackjack Mulligan. Barry Windham, is his uncle.
Hmm.
He's Mike Rotunda's son. And so this family is so intertwined in wrestling. You saw, obviously, a lot of his contemporaries are crushed, but also so many people in the generation before that were, saw him grow up.
Yeah, yeah,
Mike would bring him to the matches, and he was around professional wrestling all his life. So everybody knew him from the time he was a little kid. And I think that, this combination of Terry Funk and Wyndham dying, man, I mean, just, I can't imagine what's going through the minds of a lot of people that are in the industry and are pro wrestlers right now, how they're feeling. I mean, this is just a double gut punch.
yeah. Wednesday was tough, and then Thursday you get hit again, like totally out the blue. And yeah, it's been a rough week for pro wrestling, not just pro wrestling, but in general. It's like those sad stories. Terry Funk was a legend, and the thing I loved about him is like how many times did he retire?
Yeah, he
And then
did.
it's like this is my last match, and but he every time he would come back, it wasn't like Flair's last match where it was like he shouldn't have done that. Terry Funk could still go and do his thing and like brought his magic, and he just kept going and going. Um, Iconic. Like if you remember Beyond the Mat, right?
Mhm.
It was like his last match, and that was what, like 20 years ago?
Right.
No, it ain't, sir. But yeah, I want to get with my non-wrestling people and watch that, man. Just tap him into who he is. I know you said he's underrated, but I think outside of the scope of wrestling, inside, if you know, like
Yeah.
he is iconic. He changed the game. He's a legend. Outside may not be as recognizable unless you see him, and like, oh yeah, I kind of remember him. But like, if you're tapped in, you're tapped in. He's the guy.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I first started watching pro wrestling and, the first thing I saw was WWF stuff.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
And then you'd start seeing some of the other shows started coming on TV and you pick up a copy of Pro Wrestling Illustrated and you're like, ooh, who's this Terry Funk guy?
Right.
And then who's Ric Flair? Who are all these guys? And you start learning about them. And then I remember when Terry came to the WWF, man, I was pumped. I'm
Yeah.
like, man, Terry Funk's coming in here. This is gonna be wild. I'm like, I can't wait for him to take on Hogan. This is gonna be great. Which he did. They did have a pretty decent feud in there. I remember when he debuted in the WWF, he attacked Mel Phillips. You remember Mel Phillips, the ring announcer?
Mm-mm.
But he attacked him, and that started the feud with the Junkyard Dog.
Okay.
That kind of
Yeah, I
got
remember that.
got everything rolling. So it was something. And then of course, I remember the feud that happened with Ric Flair when he was judging Rick and Terry Steamboat's match in WCW. That Terry all of a sudden came in and challenged Rick, and Rick kind of was like, "Yeah, you've been away for a while, I don't know if that's a good idea." Because he didn't want to beat up Terry Funk, and then Terry Funk just destroyed him, mauled him, put him
Right.
through a table, and the war between Funk and Flair was on again. And then doing the hardcore matches in Japan. I mean, it was just absolutely incredible what Terry and ECW, obviously, just incredible what he did in his career. So yeah, so two guys that, of course, Terry was suffering from dementias at the end of his life. And, you kind of knew that day was coming, but obviously with Bray Wyatt, no clue.
Yeah,
So,
that was a complete shocker. I mean, definitely shout out to both and, rest easy. Terry Funk lived a long, beautiful life doing what he loves,
yes, he did.
and that's the magical thing. Then you look at like Bray Wyatt, it's like we didn't even, get the little bit of what he had in store for us. So
Yes, that is very true.